In this video, I'm going to answer some questions. One of the questions that I receive quite a bit is whether someone should do a Spanish squat or a wall sit for patellar tendinopathy. And so what both of those are, they're isometric exercises for the quads. The Spanish squat was popularized by Ebony Rio, and her research found that heavy isometric exercises had a pain relieving effect for the patellar tendon. And I think the difference is that a wall sit puts less of a load on the quads and therefore the patellar tendon than the Spanish squat. And that's just because you don't have a wall to take off some of the load of the exercise. And so if available, I think that the Spanish squat is actually a better exercise because it puts a little bit more load. But if you don't have the equipment you need or you just don't feel comfortable doing the Spanish squat, you can do a heavy isometric exercise with a leg extension machine, or you could just do a wall sit and put a little bit of load on there as well. It depends on the athlete. Another question that I receive frequently is whether deep tissue therapy or deep tissue massage is better than gentle soft tissue therapy. And typically in a session, somebody will say, you can press harder if you need to, or I can take more pressure, or, it goes along with the no pain, no gain, or even, my last therapist, we really found some stuff and they got in there, I was really sore in my shoulder after the work, and, maybe there was some bruising and stuff like that. And I think this brings up a very important topic, and that is we really should focus on whatever we're trying to achieve. So with soft tissue therapy, we're either trying to decrease pain or improve range of motion. And so those are the metrics that we're trying to achieve. So for me, I'm going to try to put the least amount of force to achieve those goals. And so if we're going in there and causing bruising, we're causing some soft tissue trauma, which isn't what we want. And if we're just pushing as hard as we can in there, it might cause the muscle to spasm, which is going to limit that range of motion and could increase more pain and threat. So, we don't necessarily need to have deep tissue therapy to achieve the goals that we want. So if I don't have to make someone sore afterwards or cause more pain, then I think that's the route that we want to go from a treatment perspective. The emphasis on deep tissue work really kind of stems from the scar tissue theory, in being that scar tissue was either causing pain or limiting range of motion. But it turns out scar tissue is part of the healing process for one, but it's also really strong tissue. So the amount of force you would need to break up that tissue is far more than anyone can apply through either their hands or, grassed in, iced in, that kind of stuff. The way that you would have to break up scar tissue would be through a scalpel. You'd have to cut it. And that's a good thing, because if you were to sneeze or run, cough, jump, anything like that, if scar tissue was that delicate that you could just break it up with your hands over the skin, that means it would rip anytime you move. So it's actually a really good thing that scar tissue is actually really strong tissue. What kind of exercises should someone do if they're trying to prevent low back pain? And typically whenever we're talking about low back pain, we typically talk about the core. So doing planks, side planks, glute bridges, all those kind of things, which I think are great. There's no problem with them at all. But the problem is that not a lot of people actually like doing core work. And so from the research perspective, core exercises actually haven't been shown to be that much more beneficial than other exercises. And so the real answer to this is we want to do whatever you're going to do. So if you like to run, go run. If you like to walk, go walk. If you like core exercises, plank, side plank, away. Do all those things. If you like to weightlift, do that. The best way to kind of prevent low back pain is actually just to be mobile and to move. So whatever exercise you want to do, that's probably the exercise that you should do. How often and how long should you do mobility work? This is a really great question. Foam rolling and lacrosse ball work, self-myofascial release, I think are all great things to incorporate into your daily life. I also saying that, don't think that you have to do them every day. It really depends on the individual. So if someone's doing a lot more working out, let's say they're a big runner, so they're running 50 to 100 miles a week or something like that, they might need to do a little bit more mobility work just because their muscles are going to get tight from that activity. So they might want to spend a little bit more time foam rolling their quads or their calves or their glutes and all that kind of stuff, versus someone who doesn't exercise as frequently. They probably don't need to do it as frequently, but incorporating some sort of tissue quality treatment into your life, I think is great. So whether that's yoga, self-myofascial release, anything like that, I think you should do it. The answer to that question really depends on the individual. With that being said, I also don't think that most people need to spend 30 minutes or an hour focusing on tissue quality. If that's the case and you're not seeing the results, so you're still just as tight, you're having pain and all that kind of stuff, it might not be a mobility issue. So having someone actually look at you to figure out what is going on can actually help save time and also just help you get to wherever you want to go. Should your legs be stacked or separated during the side plank? So obviously the side plank is a very common exercise for those experiencing low back pain, and one of the common things that I hear is whether the feet should be actually separated, so split, or if they should be stacked. And honestly, I don't think it really matters. So the lead researcher in low back pain, Stu McGill, typically advocates for a separated stance. And that's because in his exercise progression, he'll go from a side plank to a plank. So it makes it easier to roll over when your feet are separated. But from a pain outcome standpoint or a muscle activation standpoint, I haven't found any information that would lead me to believe that separating the legs is better than stacked. So really it's up to the individual. If you feel more confident when you're doing a side plank with your feet separated for balance, that's great. If you prefer your feet stacked, that's also great. In the grand scheme of things, I don't think it really matters because eventually you're probably going to progress out of a side plank anyway, so you're arguing over something that's temporary anyways. Do we need to isolate our stabilizing muscles? This is I know I've said it on all of them, this is a really good question as well. And I'm sure there's tons of debate on this, but here's my input onto this. So typically whenever we look at like the shoulder, we would talk about the rotator cuff muscles for stability in the shoulder. If we're talking about the low back, we would be talking about the core, or for the hip, we'd be talking about glute med. And I really don't think later on there's a need to isolate these muscles if we're working out. So if we're doing a shoulder press, for example, the rotator cuff's going to be active while we're doing a shoulder press. Or if we're deadlifting or squatting, the core is going to be engaged during those activities. So I don't think there's a need later on to isolate any of these stabilizer muscles. But in the beginning, if someone's in pain, we can lighten the load of the exercises, which is typically what these stabilizing exercises are. They're just movements with lighter load, which I think is totally fine to help either build up confidence or just to kind of get things moving again. But the thought that the stabilizer muscles wouldn't be active during regular movement, so like a shoulder press, running, jumping, all that kind of stuff, I don't think that's true. Your stabilizer muscles are going to be active during those. That's their whole job. So the thought that we need to do isolated stabilizing exercises, probably not true. Thank you for watching this episode. I hope that you found this information useful. If you did, go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up. If you have more health and fitness questions, go ahead and put them in the comments below and I'll make another video answering some of those questions. If you want to see more of my content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, which I'm pretty sure is on this side, but it could be on this side and I don't want to miss a subscriber. So whatever side that subscribe button is, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well.